These white dots are bugs, and there's a good chance you've eaten them before. Raised on cactuses, they're called cochineals, and the acid in their guts makes a vibrant red dye. It ends up in tons of products, from strawberry yogurt to M&Ms to lipstick. Indigenous people across Latin America traded it for thousands of years. And in the 17th century, it was Mexico's second most valuable export, behind silver. It can be found on the walls of archaeological sites, in priceless paintings, and in the robes of kings. Synthetic dyes and pressure from animal rights activists have pushed some Mexican farms to abandon production altogether. And cultivation of cochineals has been disappearing.
It's a shame because it's the most powerful, brilliant red dye in existence.
This will be the last time Inés Carmona de Gante farms cochineals on her land.
Hicimos todo lo que se pudo.
Others, like Catalina Yolanda Lopez, say they'll do everything they can to keep their production going.
Valorábamos, digamos, la grana cochinilla como un tesoro que nos dejaron nuestros antepasados y que teníamos que lograr que sobreviviera.
But Catalina doesn't know how much longer her family can keep this ancient tradition alive. Cochineal bugs are tiny parasites that live on cactuses. And the stuff that becomes the powerful red dye makes up almost a quarter of their weight. But it's not blood. It's actually a naturally occurring compound called carminic acid that's a repellent against predators like ants. Cochineals eat prickly pear cactuses, or nopales as they're known in Mexico. They have all the moisture and nutrients the bug needs to survive.
Y a otra planta ya no la alimenta.
Catalina's grandmother taught her how to raise cochineals when she was just 4 years old. Today, she's one of the last cochineal producers in all of Mexico, running a farm in Oaxaca. It all starts in her field of young nopales. These baby cactuses are cuttings of older ones.
Un nopal podemos sacar fracciones y multiplicarlo. Cada penca de abajo desarrolla dos, como si fueran conejitos, aquí vemos.
Farmers have to wear gloves to protect against the cactus's needles as they cut off the paddles.
Espinitas de 3 milímetros que se entierran en la piel y que son muy dolorosas. En el cuerpo a veces se me llegan a encajar y como no los puedo buscar, pues se me quedan ahí, que ya parezco nopal.
Next, Catalina washes the cactus with soap and water. Only then can she place the cochineals on the paddles.
Estamos anidando lo que es la grana cochinilla madre, poniéndola dentro de un nido de palma.
These look like finger traps, but they're actually tiny houses for the bugs. Catalina says no one makes them anymore, so she has to be careful not to break them.
Y dentro de 12 horas o 10 horas van a aparecer la grana cochinilla bebé caminando a través de los agujeros de las uniones de la palma.
And once they've spread across the paddle, she hooks in a wire and hangs it up. Now the cochineals can get to munching.
Esto lo denominamos nopaloteca. En lugar de libros acomodados así, tenemos nopales. Aquí está protegida del aire, de la lluvia, del frío, del calor. Y este rack lo inventé hace más de 50 años.
Catalina constantly has to check for predators in the nopal library. Predators like this telero worm.
Y este se come la grana cuando está en estado larvario.
Every white dot you see here is a cochineal.
Tiene un polvo alrededor de ella como si fuera talco o harina.
The white powder acts as a glue to help the insects stick to the paddle, and it protects them against the sun too. Cochineals stick their probe into the cactus skin and suck out the water and nutrients.
Y en eso su cuerpecito empieza a trabajar como un laboratorio, transformando los azúcares en ácido carmínico.
Only female cochineals produce carmine. The males are tiny, have wings, and fly away. But don't call these little guys beetles or cockroaches.
Las cucarachas tienen caparazón, tienen 2 antenas y son muy feas. Y estas son preciosas.
Once stayed over in Puebla, almost all of Carmona's nopal fields will be gone. She plans to replace it with corn and save just a few cactuses to raise cochineals as a hobby. She comes out to weed her fields and brush off any predators.
Las arañas, los bichos.
She looks for the perfect cactuses to bring back to her hungry bugs in the greenhouse.
Puede ser pequeño, puede ser chueco, deforme, pero debe de ser grueso, que tenga alimento.
Caretakers of the cochineals have to constantly move babies to new nopal paddles, and after 3 to 4 months, the female insects are ready for harvesting. Carmona uses a sieve to separate the bugs from their clothes, the powder and silk they make.
Y se queda nada más la grana.
As the dead cochineals dry out, their squishy pods solidify. Carmona sells them whole.
Todo este hilo de acá hasta allá para sacar 3 kilos de grana húmeda y nos queda uno de grana así.
Catalina and her daughter, Claudia Juarez Lopez, use a traditional metate to grind them into a brilliant red.
Es preferible hacerlo a mano, ya que nosotros creemos que es mejor la molienda, es más despacio y el color se concentra más.
Either way, it's very tedious work. It takes 70,000 bugs to make just 1 pound of dye. The powder has to be dunked in an alcohol solution and filtered to remove the insect parts. Catalina sells a kilo of her dried cochineal for about $150.
No es mucho. Así, con todo este trabajo que lleva, tendría un precio de 10,000 pesos por kilo.
Large food brands use carminic acid in everything, from Yoplait strawberry yogurt and Airheads to Nerds and M&M's in the UK. But customers will never taste it.
No cambia el sabor. O sea, la grana solamente tiene puro color.
It appears on the nutrition label as Carmine, Natural Red 4, Crimson Lake, or E120 in the European Union. Carmine is also frequently used in the cosmetic industry. And that use is anything but new. Cochineal dates back thousands of years in Mexico. It was used in lipsticks, textiles, royal headdresses, and wall art like those in the pyramids of Montalban. After Hernán Cortés conquered the Aztecs, he brought cochineal back to Europe. And it quickly replaced European dyes because cochineal fixed onto wool and silk better, lasted longer, and created a more vibrant red.
About 15 times more powerful than anything that had been seen before.
It came to represent power, showing up in the highest of fashion. The Catholic Church used it in its red cardinal robes, and the British Army used it in their red coats. And soon, artists like Van Gogh, Renoir, and Rembrandt were painting cochineals into their masterpieces. In the 1800s, women in the United States started using it to color food, from cakes and candies to jellies and pickled red cabbage. But then in 1856, synthetic dyes were invented, first with mauve, made from byproducts of coal, and then in 1878 with red number 2, made from petroleum.
It was very difficult to compete because they had lower prices, larger volume, and similar qualities.
And these synthetics just about wiped out cochineal production in Mexico. Then in 1976, the FDA banned red number 2 under suspicion it could cause cancer. And so began a renewed interest in natural dyes. But At that point, there were almost no cochineal growers left in the country. Catalina's family was one of just 3 still working with the insects. So she made it her life mission to preserve this bug and teach others about cochineal. She started selling the dye to local artisans and chefs and turned her farm into a museum to lead workshops for people interested in the bug.
Por amor a los insectos. Creo que nuestro corazón está con los insectos, nuestra vida está con los insectos.
But much of Catalina's work has been reversed in the last 2 decades. Brands like the liqueur Campari and Starbucks stopped using carmine due to pressure from vegetarian customers. The pandemic was another blow. Orders stopped completely for Carmona. And that's when she decided to stop cochineal production.
Se viene la pandemia y se acabó todo.
Last year, she produced 400 kilos of the bug. This year, she expects just 50 kilos.
En 2 meses desaparece el espacio.
She switched this entire greenhouse to tomatoes.
Pues sí necesito algo que me genere dinero.
So can Mexican producers save their cochineal? The answer could lie with Peru. The government started investing in cochineal farming in the 1990s to help boost employment in rural parts of the country. And now Peru dominates more than 80% of the market. American-based liqueur brands have started using it again in place of synthetic dyes. It was even the inspiration for Pantone's Color of the Year. And there's growing demand across the globe. But Peru has some advantages. The country produces a wild kind of cochineal that grows outdoors without much farmer involvement, so it's cheaper. And while Mexican domesticated cochineal have more carminic acid, they also need to be grown indoors to protect from parasites. To be able to deliver large-scale orders from international buyers, farmers like Catalina would have to build more greenhouses and hire labor. But that's too expensive. Catalina had to turn down 2 letters of interest from English buyers because she simply couldn't produce the amount of dye they needed. Experts say investments from the Mexican government could help farmers.
To provide basically seed money to Oaxaca peasant women.
In the meantime, Catalina hopes to keep educating every visitor who stops by her farm.
Creo que hay oportunidad para que esta cultura renazca.
Just like she taught her daughter Claudia, who's won awards for her work with the bug.
Sin el apoyo pues de los hijos, a lo mejor se hubiera ya perdido este trabajo que viene desarrollando mi mamá.
But until investments or customers come, some cochineals will be lost. And Catalina will be here, caring for her bunny cactuses and tiny little bugs.
Y mantener vivo esta especie que creemos que es un legado cultural del México antiguo.